All right. Hey, everybody. Dr. Sean Talbot here. Hey, we're going to talk about leaky gut today, a really, really popular topic that actually, in some sectors of the medical community, it doesn't even exist because there's no drug for it. So leaky gut is not a disease. Leaky gut is a sort of a normal aspect of how your gut is functioning. And what we're going to talk about today is not just why it's important, right? I say to people all the time that if you have leaky gut, you very likely also have leaky brain. We're going to talk about what leaky gut is. We're going to talk about why you should care about it. And importantly, we're going to talk about how you can fix it. Because leaky gut is one of those things that is wildly modifiable by dietary interventions, by lifestyle interventions, by specific supplements. And we're going to unpack all of that. So I'm going to try to go through this as quickly as possible, give you the really, important, actionable kinds of steps. Stay until the end because I'm going to recommend specific ingredients. I'm going to recommend specific products, specific regimens that you can do. And if you want more information about it, just always feel free to hit my website, doctalbot.com. We've got a lot of really good information up there, blogs and, different product recommendations and different dietary recommendations and things like that. So let's get into this. So the question comes up sometimes, how do I know if I have leaky gut? And if I have leaky gut, do I need to do a complete gut reset? And you don't necessarily need to do that. When we talk about leaky gut, we're talking about the lining of your intestines. We're not talking necessarily about the bacteria, your microbiome. We're not necessarily talking about digestive issues, as you see right here, things like bloating and gas and constipation and diarrhea and all that kind of stuff. If you have those issues, it's very likely that you also have leaky gut, but you can have leaky gut without having any of these gut issues. And very often that's the situation, is that people feel kind of awful, and the reason is something that's happening in their gut. It's these systemic symptoms that they're having. It's fatigue. It's poor sleep quality. It's brain fog. It's food intolerances or food allergies. It's not necessarily that you have a problem with the food. It's a mismatch between your food and what's happening in your gut at that particular time. And I'll say this again. I'll probably say it 1,000,000 times through this presentation. It is modifiable. We can fix very readily what's happening in your gut. As a result of that, we can help your skin problems like eczema and psoriasis are skin problems that are really gut problems that are expressed on the skin. So putting something on them topically might get rid of the symptoms, might calm the inflammation on the skin. But if you haven't solved the problem here in the gut, that skin problem is going to keep coming back and coming back and coming back. Same thing with autoimmune system problems. Autoimmune system problems are that your immune system is agitated or irritated or aggravated in some way, and it is attacking part of you. It might be attacking your joints. It might be attacking your gut. It might be attacking your thyroid. It might be attacking some other aspect of your body. But the reason that your immune system is out of balance is because your gut is out of balance. And I'm going to unpack a little bit of this as we go through. So a lot of these systemic problems that we experience, especially just feeling kind of crappy all the time, is really because you have leaky gut. And, if you do feel like you need a whole gut reset, we offer that as well. So you can go here to this website, doctalbot.com/reset, and you can put in your information. And when we open up the next one, it's usually a 14-day program. And it's kind of fun. It goes through diet recommendations, and there's a couple little challenges, and we have lifestyle interventions that we recommend. And over the course of 2 weeks, we completely reset the gut. But what what we do there is we don't do just the leaky gut thing. Here we're talking about, and we kind of broadly call it a weed seed feed, where we get rid of the bad guys. Let me move my little video here. We get rid of the bad guys, we populate with the good guys, and then we nourish the good guys. So it's really sort of getting rid of something, putting in something better, and then bolstering that better. So you're feeling better and better and better. What we're talking about today is this, the gut lining piece of it. That's different than the bad guys. It's different than something like SIBO, small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, which I have a whole nother video on and a whole nother set of recommendations. But I'm going to really try to focus on just the leaky gut piece of it as we go through this presentation. And again, if you want more research, more information about all of that, go to doctalbot.com/reset, and you can get all the information. So I am old enough where I remember being in graduate school a million years ago, and we would have friends who were sort of like the weeds and seeds hippie kinds of people who would say things like this: all disease begins in the gut. And Hippocrates, the father of medicine, said this 2,500 years ago. And it's as a young budding scientist, we would look at that and go, cute, right? That's great, but there's no research to back that up. It's something that's been observed, that if you have gut problems, you very likely have other problems, like some of the ones that I just listed on the previous couple of slides. And the solution, of course, to this, to this gut problem, is to use food as your medicine. And nowadays we have really good research to show that. So one of the fun parts of my job is that I get to go to these scientific conferences and I get to put up slides like this, and then I get to follow up with microbiome data or leaky gut data or gut reset data or gut-brain axis signaling data, and show, hey, Hippocrates was onto something 2,500 years ago. He didn't have the data, and he didn't have the techniques, and he didn't have the science and the cause and effect that we have nowadays. But nowadays, every major university, every major medical center in the world has a microbiome research group or has a gut health research group. Like here's just one example. This is from Arizona State University. This is the Biodesign Institute, showing the linkage between the gut and the rest of the body, and the gut and disease, and the gut and metabolism. So, I say very often, what happens in the gut doesn't stay in the gut. Those signals permeate out into the rest of the body. Likewise, how you feel in your head isn't just in your head, it's also in your gut. So that idea of the brain in your head and the second brain in your gut communicating with each other is a well-founded scientific concept now, only about over the last 10 years, let's say, but it's been something that has been observed for thousands of years. And the cool thing about it is that now we can get very precise with our recommendations to people to say, okay, your problem seems to be the bacteria. Let's fix the microbiome. Your problem seems to be the integrity of your gut, aka leaky gut. Let's address that. Or it's a growth of bad bacteria where it shouldn't be. Or it's a systemic inflammatory problem, which starts in your gut and permeates out, et cetera, et cetera. So if we think of this as a systems problem, we can really make some meaningful changes for people. Not just things that we can measure, but things that can make a big difference in their life. And so here's one way to look at it. So this is the microbiome piece. And we're not going to focus in this particular presentation too much about the microbiome, but your microbiome, the bacteria in your gut, is related to leaky gut. And so they work in concert with each other in some very important ways. So in an overly simplistic way, this is how we sort of think about this, that you have good bacteria, beneficial microbes, and bad bacteria, harmful microbes, in your gastrointestinal tract at all times. And in a balanced state, we want the good guys to outnumber the bad guys. We don't want to have zero bad guys, because in most cases, these bad guys that we want to have around are placeholders, so that the really bad guys that cause diseases like food poisoning and salmonella and E. coli's and things like that, if there's guys who are just sort of bad, the really bad guys can't get in there. And so what we want to have is a balance of the good guys keeping the bad guys in check. Just as a little aside, the reason that we call them that, good guys and bad guys, is because the good guys are primarily making things that we want, signals that we want. Short chain fatty acids that are good for our metabolism, neurotransmitters that are good for our mood and our motivation and things like that, anti-inflammatory molecules, whereas the bad guys are making inflammatory molecules. So you can see right there, if we have not enough of the good signals, we're going to feel not good. And if we have too many of the bad signals, we're going to feel more bad. And so, you can change that in a couple of ways. You can lower the bad guys so you have less of those bad, irritating signals. Or you could increase the good guys, so you have more of the happy signals. Or, ideally what we do is a little bit of both, right? We feel less bad and more good, and that's how we get to feeling, optimal, how we get to, what we call thriving, or what we call flourishing in positive psychology research. On the other side here, you see dysbiosis, where the bad guys are outnumbering the good guys, right? And that's, that takes you in the wrong direction. So you get that. This is a slide that I use with all my students. And what it's showing here is all of the different signals that go across your gut-brain axis. So let me just quickly orient you here. There's a green side, good signals, and a red side, bad signals. And you can trace them either down from the brain, going from the top down from the brain all the way down to the gut, or you can trace it up from the gut going up to the brain. So let's do it that way. Let's trace it from bottom to top. And at the very, very bottom, you see these influential factors. You see foods, things that we eat that nourish our bodies also nourish the bacteria in our gut. And if we're eating too many of these red foods, right, high-fat food, sugar, food additives, processed foods, basically, we're changing the bacteria. We're growing a population of bacteria that is not very good at making a mucus lining. That's the protective lining for our gut lining. You're changing the integrity of the gut lining. That's the leaky gut that we're really going to focus on over the next couple of slides. But you're also changing the signaling that goes across the gut-brain axis. You're changing inflammatory molecules. You're changing signaling across the nervous system. You're basically sending signals all the way up to the brain that cross the blood-brain barrier that will lead you to neuroinflammation and neurodegeneration. Neuroinflammation is going to be linked to depression, anxiety, PTSD, ADHD, that kind of stuff. And neurodegeneration is going to lead to Alzheimer's and dementia and Parkinson's and MS and those sorts of things, right? So you want to have less of these signals, less of these foods, less of these gut changes. The red is going to be more leaky gut. We're going to talk about leaky gut in just a second. On the green side, you're eating more fruits and vegetables, you're eating fermented foods like yogurts, you're eating, beans and things like that. You're growing a different population of bacteria that grows a larger mucus lining, so that protects this very delicate epithelial cell layer. Those are your intestinal cells. That if they have good integrity, you have less leakiness. That's going to be a good thing. And you're going to have signals that go across the blood-brain barrier and across the gut-brain axis that are anti-inflammatory in nature and that are high in neurotransmitters like serotonin, so you're happier, and dopamine, so you're more motivated, and GABA, so you can relax when you're stressed out. And those signals, when they get to the brain, across the blood-brain barrier, are going to be associated with neuroprotection, protecting the neurons that are there, and also with neurogenesis, growing new neurons, what we sometimes call brain plasticity. So you want to be more in the green zone, and there's ways that we can get there by eating the right foods, eating more of the right foods and less of the wrong foods. But this is what I meant by what I said on the very first slide. If you have a leaky gut, you very likely have a leaky brain. Your brain is protected from the body by the blood-brain barrier, what you see here, the BBB. That is a semi-permeable membrane, which only lets certain things across. Your gut lining, right here, epithelial cells, is also a barrier, a semi-permeable barrier. And it protects the body from the things that are inside the gut, which are technically still outside of the body until they get absorbed into the bloodstream. But if you have a leaky gut, which you'll be able to see it visually in a little more detail on a future slide, things that are supposed to stay in the gut, meaning stay outside of the body, will actually leak into the bloodstream. And that's where the problems start coming. That's why leaky gut leads to the problems, leads to your brain fog and your fatigue and your autoimmune system problems and your skin issues and things like that. So that's really what we're going to talk about today. Okay? The other reason this is really, really important is that your gut lining and your microbiome communicate with your immune system. And that's one of the key signals that is going across your gut-brain axis, is a signal being carried by your immune system. About 70% of your immune system is in your microbiome, or it is in your gut. Let's say it that way. So the microbiome and the gut lining is really important because they in concert will do this: educate, train, orchestrate, and coordinate your systemic immune system response. So if those signals are out of balance, you're going to have an immune system that is irritated and overactivated and leading to problems throughout the rest of the body. So that problem could be with your bacteria. It could be with the lining of the gut. But wherever the problem is, it leads to a problem systemically. It's not just a gut thing. It's a whole body thing. And that ends up being a brain thing as well. So the thing that I love about this is that, and talking about this, is that it's pretty easy to fix now. Over the last 10 years or so, there have been some really good studies that show we can intervene at the level of the bacteria and get more neurotransmitters and more short-chain fatty acids. We can intervene at the level of the gut lining and make sure that those signals are appropriate and the gut lining is not leaky. We can intervene in the system at the vagus nerve, or et cetera, et cetera. We're thinking of it as a system instead of just one tiny little piece in time. And I think that's an important consideration. That might make it sound more complicated, but it's actually really easy in practice. And at the end of this, I'm going to recommend, like I said, specific products, specific nutrients, specific interventions that you can use yourself. Or if you're a certified mental wellness coach, or you're a holistic nutritionist, or any kind of practitioner, you can recommend these to your clients to help them feel better and perform better mentally and physically. So here's sort of a zoom in of what leaky gut would look like, right? It's at a microscopic level, so you can't see it, but you can certainly feel it. And when we talk about it, sometimes we'll call it leaky gut, sometimes we'll call it impaired barrier integrity, sometimes we'll call it excessive gut lining permeability. There's all kinds of terminology around it. What it basically means is that here are your healthy cells. Each one of these individual cells you can think of as a brick in a wall. And each one of those bricks has mortar in between it. And that mortar has to have good integrity. If that mortar starts to break and crumble, or the bricks start to break and crumble, that ends up being porous, tight junctions. That means that water can leak through the grout. Water can leak through the cracks in the bricks. If you sort of visualize it that way, what ends up happening is that things that are supposed to stay in the gut lumen will leak across into your systemic circulation, and that causes an immune system activation. So the immune system gets activated, it leads to inflammation, it leads to oxidative stress, it leads to tissue damage throughout the entire body, and that is sometimes we refer to that as metabolic endotoxemia. Endotoxemia basically means that there's endotoxin in the blood. The emia is the blood part, the endo is the endotoxin part, and the endotoxin refers to the proteins that are either part of the bacterial cell wall, or a protein like a gluten or a casein, gluten coming from wheat, casein coming from dairy, that can be problematic for some people. But if you have a good barrier function, none of that happens. If you have a leaky gut, all of that happens. And the solution for that fatigue isn't an energy drink. The solution for that skin problem, like a psoriasis or an eczema, isn't a topical formulation that kills the inflammation. The solution for that overactive immune system isn't an autoimmune system drug that suppresses your immune system. The solution to all of those problems is to get to the root of the problem, which is that leaky gut. And so, people will sometimes say, well, what are some of the things that could lead me to get a leaky gut, to have a leaky gut? Well, there's a lot of them. And when you look at this whole list, dietary proteins, like I just mentioned, gluten and casein, not having the right enzymes, so your digestion is poor, antibiotics, infections, blood sugar issues, antibodies, but just stages of life, pregnancy, stress, menopause, etc. Those are all things that so many of us are exposed to. It's a wonder that we don't all have leaky gut. And in fact, I think most people have leaky gut at some degree or some level, unless they're doing some of the things that I'm going to be recommending to you, like eating your fermented foods and getting your polyphenols and getting your good fiber from fruits and vegetables and things like that. But that causes that leakiness. leads to, the metabolic byproduct of that, the metabolic cascade. And up until about 10 years ago, there were lots of people in the medical establishment and lots of scientists like me who would kind of go, I don't know, leaky gut, it's kind of this like non-specific bunch of symptoms that could be caused by other things. And does it really exist? And so now we know that it does exist. There's lots of research studies that show, yes, these different things can cause damage to the gut lining. That leaky gut leads to these systemic problems. There are also studies that show that we can solve that with some very focused, like precision nutrition interventions. Here's just one of those. This study came out in a journal called Neurobiology of Stress in 2023. Here's the title of it: Psychosocial Stress-Induced Intestinal Permeability in Healthy Humans. What is the evidence? And so this paper went through all the evidence. If we were to retitle this in a more simplistic way, it would say stress leads to leaky gut. What is the evidence? And one of the quotes that I pulled out of here is what you see on your screen right now. An impaired intestinal barrier function can be detrimental to the host, as it may allow the translocation of luminal antigens and toxins into the subepithelial tissue and bloodstream. That's what I just showed you on the last slide. Leaky gut, you have those loose junctions. It allows things that are supposed to stay in the gut to leak across to the bloodstream and lead to these problems. And then this other quote that says psychosocial stress is one of the factors that can increase intestinal permeability. So everybody is stressed out these days. Everybody is sleep deprived. Everybody is on sort of 24/7, and that stress in your brain and stress in your body can stress out your gut and lead to this, lead to leaky gut issues. So, pretty much everybody who's watching this right now needs some of these solutions. And these kinds of studies, looking at the lifestyle causes of leaky gut, have been done so many times. It's like, it's like paint by numbers now. It's like dot to dot to dot. We know what's going to happen. These studies have been done in rodents. These studies have been done in humans. We know that if we have a stress, right? And here the stress in my example is the standard American diet. Not eating enough fruits and vegetables, eating lots of processed foods, eating a lot of fast foods and that kind of stuff. That's the stress. That changes your gut flora, right? It leads to that dysbiosis, right? An imbalance of good bacteria, bad bacteria. That increases your permeability. That's the leaky gut piece. Or a change in your barrier function or excessive permeability, or however you want to say it, but, leaky gut. That leaky gut leads to increased LPS absorption. So LPS is the lipopolysaccharide. That's the food leaking through. That's the bacteria leaking through. That's the gluten and the casein leaking through when it shouldn't. That leads to endotoxemia, right? That's endotoxin in the blood. That activates your immune system and leads to inflammation. And that leads to metabolic disorders. So it leads to diabetes and obesity and thyroid problems and eczema and psoriasis and autoimmune problems and garden variety brain fog and daytime fatigue, all the things. And it's just step by step by step by step. We've studied it enough times where we know exactly what's going to happen. But then the question is, well, if we know so much about it, how do we solve it? And same thing, lots and lots of studies that have shown how do we fix that. And one of the most well-studied and impactful is to recommend what's called a PR diet, a polyphenol-rich diet. This is just one of many studies that have been done in humans to show that we can, not only is leaky gut a thing, but we can solve leaky gut in a very meaningful, impactful way. And here's one of the trials. This came out in 2021, also very, very recent. A polyphenol-rich dietary pattern improves intestinal permeability. So the way they were looking at leaky gut, they called it impaired intestinal permeability. So that's the leaky gut situation. To solve that, they applied a polyphenol-rich diet, and that improved intestinal permeability, meaning it reduced leaky gut. All kinds of ways we can measure that. And in a polyphenol-rich diet, it's things like blueberries and apples and pomegranates, green tea, chocolate, coffee, citrus fruits, right? Those are all foods that are high in polyphenols. And the polyphenols will do good things to your microbiome, will do good things to your gut lining, will do good things to your immune system, will do good things to your inflammation and your blood flow, will do good things for your neurotransmitters. So just this one intervention is a multi-system, multifactorial intervention because it's addressing each one of those layers, so to speak, where I showed you on that previous slide that was green on one side and red on the other side. What you're eating changes the signaling at every single layer from the gut all the way up through the body into the brain, that brain-body biome sort of complex system. I mean, it's a complex system and it's complex signaling, but it's actually a very simple intervention. It's very similar. These kinds of interventions are very similar to the diets that I recommend in one of my recent books, the Mental Fitness Diet. So here's the mental wellness food pyramid. It's lots of fresh fruits and vegetables. It's lots of herbs and spices. It's lots of beans. It's not so much red meat, but not zero red meat, right? So it's a very balanced diet, sort of like Mediterranean diet-ish. If you look at it, not in pyramid form, if you look at it in sort of plate form, what it's going to look like on your dinner plate, this is what it looks like. Lots of fruits and vegetables, lots of varied, very, very delicious diet. And the point is we get to choose how we feel and how we function and how we perform meal to meal to meal. You get to choose that. You can choose to feel good. You get to choose to feel bad, but just based on what we're eating, because we understand at a much deeper precision way what each of these nutrients are doing. And so, if you're going to feed your different brains, feed your brain in your head and feed your second brain in your gut, you want to eat fewer processed foods. You want to eat more fiber and more fermented foods and more polyphenols, like the diet interventions that I just showed you. You want to move your body. You want to get the right amount of sleep. You want to breathe and do stress management. All of these are really, really important, but we can also use targeted supplementation. We can use specific strains of probiotic bacteria. We can use specific types of prebiotic fibers to nourish those bacteria. We can use research-backed phytonutrients, which are plant extracts. I have specific recommendations at my website, doctalbot.com, where you can click on the link in the blog and go right to a product that is a leaky gut product. I have a whole regimen, a leaky gut regimen, which is just 3 products, but across those 3 products, you've got several different ingredients, such as the ones that I have on this next slide. So if you're going to look at the key ingredients to help to repair that gut barrier, the very first one is something called glutamine. It's an amino acid. So L-glutamine is an amino acid that those specific enterocytes, the individual bricks in that brick wall, that's what they use as their fuel source. So if they don't have enough glutamine, they can't do their job well, meaning they can't serve as a good barrier, and they basically shrivel down. They develop, leaks in the junctions, and you have leaky gut just because you don't have the energy for those cells. So supplementing with glutamine is a great way to improve the energy and the metabolism of those cells, and therefore that's one way you can help to repair leaky gut. Zinc carnosine is another one that does that. This is a form of zinc that is going to be good for your immune system, but it's also going to be good for your gut barrier integrity. It will help your cells make more mucus so that can be protective. So you're getting sort of a like a twofer. You're getting a benefit for your immune system, and you're getting a benefit for your gut lining. And we already talked about how your immune system and your gut lining are related to each other. Immunoglobulins are a way to bind up some of the bad stuff that we don't want leaking across. So things like LPS, that lipopolysaccharide. You can use immunoglobulins to bind up so that you don't get that immune overactivation. We can use a category of phytonutrients that are called mucilaginous. So they help to create more mucin. Mucin is the primary protein in the mucus lining. So if you're supplementing with these herbs, you're making more mucin. You're making more of the building block to make more of that protective mucus lining, and you're able to protect that that very delicate 1 cell width thick intestinal lining, so it's less likely to become damaged. It can also do other things. You're making more mucus, you're protecting your lining, but you're also making more mucus, and that is good for your immune system vigilance. So your immune system is not overactive or underactive. It's what we call primed. It's sort of like the Goldilocks approach. You don't want too much, you don't want too little immune system activation. You want just right, and having enough mucus can help you accomplish that. This one called NAG. N-acetyl D-glucosamine is a building block for another structural component of your gut lining called glycosaminoglycans. These can help with the structure of your gut lining and help to maintain that integrity. If you don't have enough of those building blocks, you're more likely to induce damage. You're more likely to have excessive permeability or hyperpermeability, so things get across that shouldn't get across. And then we talked about polyphenols, but we should also talk about prebiotic fibers. These can help to not just nourish the bacteria that are there in your microbiome so that they're producing the right things to protect your gut lining, but they can also help you make more of compounds like butyrate, compounds called short-chain fatty acids, which can help to not just protect the intestinal permeability, but to repair the leakiness when it happens, right? Because it's going to happen, right? The modern world is going to lead us towards more leakiness, and we have to do whatever we can from a lifestyle perspective to fight back against that, to repair the damage and to maintain that integrity once it's back. One that I really, really like is this one called Microbiome X. This is a combination of 2 citrus extracts, two different kinds of citrus that are high in polyphenols that can help increase short-chain fatty acid production and improve gut barrier function. So there's another twofer, right? You get production of a beneficial metabolite, short-chain fatty acids like butyrate, and you strengthen that gut lining at the same time. So you put all that together, and you have some specific targets. So you can go out and you can go buy a glucosamine and go buy a supplement with Microbiome X and get something with more polyphenols and get something with these mucin producers like, marshmallow extract and things like that. You can buy all those separately, or you can go to my website and go to my blog and just click on my leaky gut regimen, and you're going to get 3 products that have multiple of those nutrients in it, and come at it from a perspective of, okay, we need to nourish the cells in the gut lining. We need to strengthen those tight junctions. We need to improve the mucus lining. We need to change what's happening in terms of the signaling in the microbiome. And when you think of it, again, as a system, if you can develop a product that is a system and put several products together in a larger system, your experience is overall better. So those are all there at doctalbot.com. Hit the blog area. We're going to put them also in the show notes and in the comment section. And so what I would love for you to do is in the comment section, let me know what your leaky gut symptoms are, right? Are you having brain fog? Are you having daytime fatigue? Are you the person who can't calm down at the end of the day? Are you the person that's getting the skin problems like the eczema and the psoriasis? Do you have autoimmune system problems like food intolerances and food allergies, or maybe frank like autoimmune system problems? Those are all things that we can solve with the right leaky gut regimen. And that might involve changing what your diet is. It might involve changing your sleep patterns. It might involve different supplements that we put into the system. But I want to hear what your issues are so I can help navigate and guide you towards what those solutions should be. And there are lots of really, really effective ones. So thanks a lot for watching. I'm gonna stop the share right here, and I'll see you next time.